You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
All right, welcome everybody back to the Freedom Study Group radio show on Wolf Spirit Radio. I'm your host again, Humanity Transcending. Before we go further, I just want to remind everybody about this wonderful station, Wolf Spirit Radio, that we would not be able to do what we do here without listener support. That is just the way it goes, and so we're all in this together. So if you like what you're hearing, if you resonate with something out of what you're hearing on today's show, please consider making a donation, giving a gift to Wolf Spirit Radio so we can keep on doing what we're doing, and bring you up to the minute information that matters, information that's going to impact your life in a positive way. Sometimes maybe scary at first when we hear some of these things that we haven't been aware of, but ultimately it's for the purposes of expanding our knowledge, learning more about who we are, what our power is, what we're capable of, and implementing that more and more in our lives. And so that's what in a nutshell, we're talking about today, definitely talking about freedom and rights and how to live out our lives in alignment with the freedom we so desire. So we've been talking to PJ and Christian from Global Trust Education Network, who, by the way, are offering a wonderful special offer regarding their education. So just so everybody's aware, everybody who's listening to this show, GTEN has made a special offer to Humanity Transcending listeners. If you register for the private trust education course, which they've mentioned tonight, the private trust education course at GTEN.org, that's GTEN, like Nancy.org, they will also register you for their new upcoming live webinar series, Exempt Organizations, for free. The special offer is part of their Project Pay It Forward. So your donation will cover enrollment in both courses and 1 year of membership to G10.org for you and a friend. All you need to do is send an email to trustees@g10.org or just visit the site, actually. They'll navigate you through this offer. And after registering for private trust education, mention Humanity Transcending Show. Say you want the Humanity Transcending special offer and give the name and email of your friend that you want to include. And so both of you will then be registered for both courses, and you'll both have 1 year membership to G10.org. Fabulous, fabulous offer to get your higher learning on, folks. So take advantage of that. Information about that offer is on my site, humanitytranscending.com, and it is also on G10.org. So be sure to visit those. So let's see. Did I cover everything on the comeback? Yes.
If I could, Siobhan, just add a couple things to that. One is that we actually put a link, a Humanity Transcending special offer link up in the special offers on the site, so you don't have to. It's all there now. That's between the last show and this one. And the other is, I just wanted to say that we very strongly believe that if you like what if you want to learn what we're talking about, the private trust education series is the best place to start with G10. And that's why we decided to make this offer, because, you can start immediately on the private trust education series, and then you're also in for our upcoming new stuff. So that's why we decided to put this together. It's sort of the kernel that holds it all together. If you get the private express trust part of it, then, everything else builds on that.
It really is the keystone to what we represent. So
that's where folks, we want to be starting. If we want to go forward with learning from G10, we want to be starting. They're recommending that we start with the private trust education, because this is very foundational, right? This, like you said, this is the main crux of what you guys are putting out.
Just that series alone is well over, I believe it's like 24 hours of wonderful information and dedicated understanding. We walk through the entire Private Express Trust. You get a clear understanding of what it is, how to operate as a trustee. We really cover some great stuff. So.
And we provide sample trust documents too. So you will have everything you need to set up a private express trust and the knowledge to operate it without entering federal jurisdiction.
Exactly. When you sign up, you receive access to a custom private express trust. It is your own private express trust that you can create for yourself. It's a great sample. There are over 200 documents that accompany that to help you operate and administer that trust. And it is a full-fledged trust. So it has all of your articles, all of your bylaws, your minutes, your resolutions, everything.
Exciting stuff. And yes, I've been looking over it often, almost every day. And so I've looked at one of the homework assignments, some of the reading you guys recommend, and this one is Carlton Weiss on Express Trusts, and I thought it'd be interesting to kind of point out two parts of this read that I find extremely interesting because I've been down and am down both of these paths, have been and still am in some ways down both of this path of being claiming a sovereign and secured party creditor. And so, in this essay, if you will, he kind of, tells it like it is with each one. And has certainly made me rethink if I want to, consider myself either of those things. Anyway, I'll read a little bit about what he says, and then I'd like both of you to afterwards give commentary and opinion and also share about your personal experiences that lead you to conclude what you do now about what he's talking about. So this section is called Trustees in Commerce, A Way of Life. This is part of the GTEN.org homework when you enroll for the private trust education. All right, Trustees in Commerce, A Way of Life. This is Carlton Weiss speaking now. He says, a while back I was asked to write a few paragraphs on the specific advantages of living your life as a trustee in everything you do, as opposed to as a sovereign or secured party. I was asked to cover all related bases that included a comparison to show how each choice would hold up in commerce. Again, the choices are trustee in everything you do, sovereign or secured party, right? He was asked to do a comparison and show how each choice would hold up in commerce. He says, what I came to realize is that there is only one way of life in its own category that enhances all others. All the others are actually disadvantages in commerce. He says, at that time, I had just developed a surefire way of piercing pure trusts, and I was on my way to finally uncovering the pivotal flaw in federal contract trusts. What my clients were asking from me at the time was a technology that would allow a statutory entity like an LLC, to sniff out minimum contacts people had that bound them to legislative jurisdiction, which would obviously allow the client to overcome the burden of establishing jurisdiction in their lawsuits against those people. I had no guilt about this because my philosophy is that ignorance is never an excuse. Equity compels performance regardless. Here's where he points to what I was just mentioning before. I only assisted with cases that involved people claiming to be sovereigns, secured parties, general managers, managing directors, and other players and entities like pure trusts, federal contract trusts, and corporations sole. In each instance, there was always a common theme, contradiction. Every single one of the people I cracked had contradicted themselves by their stated position compared to their actual position. Every single one of the non-statutory entities I helped pierce was a contradiction by its intended nature and its actual nature. He says sovereigns were nothing more than cestui trusts or beneficiaries. Secured parties were nothing more than people with split personalities reflected in a commercial recording. Even though I understand where they went wrong, the way they went about it was so rife with contradictions, you got the sense they had a screw loose. They couldn't really be helped because they wanted to be respected as creditors when it suited their needs. Yet they wanted to be absolved of liability like wards of the court when the pressure was too much, right? So now he goes on with this. Then he breaks it down even further. He breaks down that in order to actually be a sovereign, today, you need a plot of land that you have absolute title to, a fortified compound, a militia to protect it and protect the land, workers to maintain the compound and land, a stockpile of weapons, a stockpile of coin, gold, and silver, full understanding of many different types of law as it pertains to sovereigns and trustees. So, can any of us really live up to that? I don't know about you, but I don't have a castle, or a land or a militia or anything like that. So, maybe that stance then is not necessarily what we want to be going for.
Yeah, then if you don't feel like having your property usurped, you're going to have to form a treaty too.
Right. And hopefully you have more weapons than any, would-be conquerors. So, and then he goes into the secured party. He goes on to say, says a UCC financing statement is a very mighty financial instrument indeed, but only when used for the right situation. And then so he goes on to kind of rip into this a little bit. And, he's just saying it's not really going to work for you all the time. He's saying what you really want to be doing is if you're not happy, he says the simplest way to fix the problem is just to pull out. If you don't want the benefit, then reject it. He's even saying that it's a benefit on the part of the Secretary of State to publish the UCC-1. So he's saying that we're accepting a benefit when we do that, and he's calling it fraudulent. So very interesting stuff. What do you guys think about that?
That's great. I think the first thing that we might want to let the listeners know is that Carlton Weiss's job was to rip apart people's asset protection. Like before he became an author and proponent of the Private Express Trust, and his books on that, his job was to pierce organizations. He came from an amazing vantage point to understand what works and what doesn't, because he could rip apart anything: a corporate soul, a corporation, a Delaware corporation, a Nevada corporation, an Arizona corporation, a Wyoming corporation. It didn't matter. All forms of statutory trusts, all forms of business associations. His point is that all of them could be pierced, except the Private Express Trust. And so that background, I think, is interesting to note, because he's now talking about how the Private Express Trust is the way to go. And absolutely, I agree with him, and we've looked at all of those entities as well. It's pretty clear that they all give jurisdiction in some way, if not in the paperwork, later in the execution, in the administration of the organization, jurisdictions given by minimum contacts or in some other way. And there's all sorts of conflicts in the secured party thing. We've talked about that a little bit in court, trying to not be the name, be the sovereign or the secured party. It leads to a difficult place with any of those forms of organization for logistics and operations, as well as for asset protection, and they're all pierceable except for the Private Express Trust.
What would be a minimum contact? Like, let's say the Private Express Trust, if the trust, let's say, was to get a library card from a public library, would that be minimum contact that would open up the trust to be pierced and allow the corporate government to have jurisdiction over the trust?
Well, since we're talking about Weiss, I'll just give what he describes minimum contact as, and it's having sufficient dealings or affiliations with the forum jurisdiction which make it reasonable to require the trust to defend a lawsuit. Okay, now if that trust had obtained a library card, took out the benefit and privilege of renting books and did not bring them back, then you may be subject to a lawsuit, and it's definitely obtained a jurisdiction that could allow that to happen. So
this? I mean, so a library card, people, this is what we're talking about. Just, things that we've been just normal, the normal order of things that we've been doing growing up. I never would have thought that, having a library card would opt me in to U.S. citizen status, or at least the implied obligations that come along with that. I mean, that's kind of nuts, but you know what? This is what's going on. So little things like that we need to be aware of.
Definitely. And I think that's why we developed our next set of series, is so that we can start to, clarify the contracts and the security agreements that exist between entities to allow an interface from public to private and back. Mm-hmm. So we want to maintain that minimum contacts. We want to maintain that minimum, if not completely eradicated, liability of the trust assets when doing business in the public. And the way to do that is to maintain separate entities or special purpose vehicles, and to maintain contracts between those trusts and those special purpose vehicles. The series coming up that we are giving with our private trust education is going to be covering all of the public entities that one would perhaps operate in the public, whether it be for-profit or non-profit. We'll be focusing mostly on exempt organizations, which is the title of the series. And the exempt organizations that we're talking about are anywhere from basically any non-profit that exists all the way into not-for-profits, unincorporated associations, corporations, sole, just about anything you can think of. We're going to be covering all aspects of those entities to understand how they are created and how they are established and how they are administered and how they are used in conjunction with the Private Express Trust as well as other interfacing trusts. We have what's known also as pass-through trusts and things like that, holding trusts. These are all legitimate items. The Trust Web Structure series that we will be covering will get deeper into the contracts between the entities, allowing people to understand the security agreements and the lien rights that actually exist. Like Weiss said here, the financing statement is very powerful as long as it's being used legitimately. The contract is impenetrable, and the private contract between trustee and trust is actually protected under Article 1. So, I mean, there's just crazy things that go on that we need to understand. And there's so much that we decided to break it up into several different parts so that we could clarify what each entity does, what each contract does between the entities, and how they can be used to better the world, and of course how we can operate with them further, which of course is the private banking and lawful money, and that's going to be the topping on the that'll be the cherry on the sundae there. We won't even get into that because that's a good one there.
That's a big cherry.
It's a big cherry.
Really exciting stuff, man. And so I'll just in my own words, just to kind of reflect back what you were saying. So again, with the Private Express Trust doesn't have contact with the public, but it does have, out of that arises separate entities, what are called special purpose vehicles, which do interact with the public, but then the trusts have private contracts with each other, I guess, which would allow the flow of exchange to occur, if you will.
Though simplified, that's the gist of it. Yes, you have a private entity, you have an interfacing or pass-through entity, and you have a public entity, and these are common things that can be researched all day long. I mean, even the IRS website explains these things clearly. So none of this that we're doing we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just uncovering what most people don't fully understand, and we're putting it in a way that's malleable and understandable and that can be easily capacitated. We want to provide this information clearly and concisely, and allow people to really grasp it and use it. I feel that that's something else that really distinguishes us from the rest. Is I feel that there's a lot of scientific method, a lot of theory that goes into remedy. We're looking to form the strongest base of fundamental education that allows people to operate from their own power, and that's very important. So, just to give. And I think now would be a good time to, cover some of the things that we cover in the private trust education. The series is huge. I mean, we cover, operating as a trustee in commerce. It covers, duties of a trustee. It covers compensation, the interaction in public. It covers private contracts between the trustees and the trust. The list goes on and on. In our second part, we cover knowing who, what, and where you are. I mean, there's big expansions in every step that you take in each one of our parts of our series. And we cover what a trust is, we cover how it's made, we cover what the intention is, we cover the Constitution, jurisdiction, rights, obligations, accounting. I mean, we cover it all. We even cover minimum contacts, as we talked about earlier. We cover how to properly lien the person. We talked earlier about the secured party creditor. And what did he say? These is basically just a person with
like a
dual...
split personality reflected
like
in a a public announcement.
And we talked a lot about that in our last radio show. We talked a little bit about that being a split personality, not being able to see the living man on the document. There not being any real. There's nothing substantial behind it. There's nothing backing it, and so we talk about.
And if they can get far enough, the judges will have sent people to mental institutions because they're saying they're not the name, and they're it can really go haywire. It can go awry very quickly.
And we look to sidestep that. We look to sidestep that by giving strong fundamental information with good source material to allow you to operate and solve that issue immediately. And Weiss describes it, a little later in that article. But we describe the purpose of liening the person, what it actually is. We identify the parties. We show witnesses and appraisers. We show what the agreement looks like when you actually lien the person. You need to have a security agreement in place. You need to have an actual collateral agreement. We can show how it's recorded and then how it's published. So we cover how to do it properly with a proper entity, not just placing some lowercase name stating that they're the secured party. That's insanity. They're not operating with the kind of consistency that a court or that any public entity would want to see. And the Private Express Trust completely solves that issue. So.
Yeah, he calls it body armor for commercial warfare. That's
exactly right.
He says, throw out that fragile sovereign crown and give the man a bulletproof trustee helmet. This sounds very, very enticing. Something I want to know about.
Yeah. And so I know in that first private trust education series, we really cover a lot. We dedicate 2 workshops to the trust indenture to clearly and concisely explain every word in that document. We leave no stone unturned in that document. And in fact, we still work on that document to this day, and we still revise and update it. So those of you that have been members and those of you that intend on being members again, keep checking back, stay active, because we are always updating. We are always looking for the best options for our members. So.
Well, I'm really express a lot of gratitude for all the long hours and work you guys put into what you're doing. This is no easy task for anyone who's embarked on this. Certainly my experience has been down the road of, wanting to be a sovereign and not even really fully understanding what that meant, but wanting that, and then moving into the secured party ideas, secured party creditor ideas, and becoming more familiar with contract law. And I know that part is super important of it, the contracting part of everything. But, yeah, like that's just because a secured party creditor is up for question and debatable as to what that really means and the results you may or may not get. The one thing that I'm taking away from that learning is that, right, contract is king. So knowing how to negotiate counter offer effectively and contract with somebody or not contract with somebody effectively is huge.
That's exactly right. Yeah, the contract is king, and without the ability to know, without knowing, first of all, what you're capable of doing, what kind of rights you have in contracting, which are, limitless, but also knowing how to contract and what's your best, negotiation principle, or how are you going to handle this. And, some of our old topics, the 4 doors of contracting, what we used to talk about acceptance and, different aspects of creditorship that have been covered in different courses from different gurus. We always come full circle that it's really about the individual responsibility and their knowledge of knowing what they can do and what they can't do. And it's that knowledge of contract that allows one to operate, because, it's invisible contracts that live with us every day and every word that we speak. one of our gurus will say, he'll be talking about not our gurus, forgive me, but one of those quote unquote self-appointed gurus will talk to you about a police officer telling you to come over here. And that in effect is an actual contract. And whether you accept that contract or not is up to you. So every aspect of our life is dealing with some form of trust or some sort of contract that's being either executed, terminated, or started at any time. So it's important to just understand contract law clearly, and it's important to understand what kind of powers we have under unalienable rights.
Right. What do you think, Christian? Anything you want to add to that?
Sorry, it's all contract. And what's beautiful about the private express trust structure is that it basically contracts out those you don't want to contract with. So the ones who would be contractors, the ones who would like to contract with you on a regular basis to keep bringing you back into their jurisdiction and making you subject to it, are contracted out of the equation. And then you just have to know how to stay out.
I like that. I like that. Sounds like music to my ears. So, yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I was reading Weiss's Concise Trustee Handbook like last year, but I wasn't even really getting what I was reading, It's like it's so foreign to me reading and trying to understand this material. And now coming back to it later, speaking with you all and rereading this stuff again, I'm seeing it in a totally different light. It's like clicking. So it takes time, and we should be gentle and kind to ourselves, because I get on myself even, I need to study more, but it's like also there's nowhere to get to, there's only now. And so we want to be kind to ourselves, but we can't no longer afford to be ignorant, on the whole as a society. We see what's going on, and it is largely, I believe, due in part to our ignorance and maybe our apathy. And yes, we've been trained this way, but we have a choice now. Now, knowing what we know, we have a choice, to either stand in our rights, in our inherent freedom, or basically, you're somebody's, you're somebody's bitch all your life. And I don't know about everybody else, but I'm done. I'm nobody's bitch, and, and I want you guys to consider not being that either, so, and the only way we can do that is to become educated. Like you said, education is key. And then actually taking these action steps to carry out and live out what we've learned, which is what you guys offer. And which is what you guys offer. And so
our program facilitates both of those items. It facilitates the educational format, and it facilitates the mechanical format. And that's what's really important.
Yeah. That's huge. That's huge, because people need support around that area. You have the understanding down a good sum, and then the technical end of it is like, that support is needed around that area, and it's very cool you guys provide that support.
It's great you bring up support, because I think that's a great thing about joining us on our live webinars when we're actually recording them, is because you have the ability to interact with us. You have the ability to ask us certain questions. You have the ability to really reach out and get what you want. So, signing up early, being a part of this early, it really does have some benefits, and it gives you a lot more access to us and our opinions and what we look to share. So, the member congregation that we have, we're just so blessed to have, because we are a network. We rely on our network and our team of members to not only support us, but to bring us in, reel in some more things for us to talk about, reel in some more questions, some more topics, some more scenarios, so that we can, expand our own education. This is really, I hate to say it, but, we did this because we were selfish. We wanted to learn more.
That's what I do too. Anytime I present something, it's because it's what I'm up to. That's it. Right. Yeah, it's gotta be.
Yes. Right. I don't know if it was pure selfishness, but it was definitely related.
Partially.
We've done nothing but research this stuff for years and years, and at some point, I started to feel guilty for not sharing it back out. Like, it's like, well, okay, we need to create something that puts this in a meaningful form so that other people can get it.
That's awesome.
And that was the genesis of this.
Yeah. And since we spent enough...
Go ahead, PJ.
Okay, well, since we spent enough time, studying and understanding, we realized that we can operate not for profit, and we can operate in a structure that we can give everything away. We can still, provide coverage for our costs, and we can really, provide the best, the best information, the best scenarios to share for the least amount of support being asked. We ask very little in what we share, and I think that's really, we really wanted to share this as much as we can, but not put ourselves upside down either. So.
Yeah, it's a charitable thing you're doing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I wanted to just see if you guys would touch on, however long or however short, how did you, this is just always an interesting, to get the background. How did both of you come to studying this, not like studying this material? How did you come into this knowledge? I mean, with me, it started, it's a whole journey that hasn't stopped. It started with like becoming aware of the toxicity of the food supply. Then I became aware just of all these things. And then now it's led to this. I mean, so my journey has been like little awakenings, awakening, revelation of big ones and small ones and all sizes in between, and it doesn't end. So, I mean, how did you guys even come to meet each other? And how did you get started, on the path to where you are now?
I'll jump in and open with that. My path started from the same word that your path might have started, which was sovereignty. When I heard that sovereignty, we started studying certain individuals. I won't name any names, but individuals that had some concepts about, accepting your debts, realizing the value of your debts and returning those values, assessing those values. We started studying so much crazy stuff, but the sovereignty thing is what got me, right? It's like, I'm born sovereign. I totally understand I was born sovereign. And then you start seeing what Weiss is talking about. It's like, well, how are you representing that in court? Because the corporation is what they want to see. They want to see the person. They want to see the entity that the charge is put against. You don't have a charge against you. You're a living man. You are representing an entity that has a charge against it, and it's going to go into probate. So that they need to find somebody that's going to manage that debt. They got to find a fiduciary. So we started studying, sovereignty, and that's, when I say we, I mean my friends and I hadn't met Christian yet, and that led us into the Uniform Commercial Code and understanding commercial paper and negotiable instruments, which led us into the concept of the secured party, or the concept of the creditor, which led us to an individual who took that concept and put a massive spiritual spin on it to allow us to know that we are the ones that really control our world. We are the ones that create the energy in our lives. We are the ones that sign the signature that creates the paper, that creates the flow of energy from those banks to us and back. And, that individual happened to break open the head big time for me. And as I studied with him consistently over the next 2 years, during that time, I actually started going and seeing him. And there was another financial conference, which is where Christian and I met. Once again, I won't mention names of the financial conference, but we met at a financial conference in Los Angeles. Just on a personal note, I felt that I had known him in several lives before. It was very interesting, the kind of connection that we had. So there's a higher connection than what you normally meet when you meet someone. So we hit it off right at the moment, and he introduced me to a paper that he was writing, and a concept that he was writing about consciousness, and that really hit it off for us. And as we continued our journey, I continued reading about these topics and understanding more, and that's when I was introduced into trust law. That's when I was introduced to Weiss's Concise Trustee Handbook. When we're talking about the secured party creditor, those that follow understand who I'm talking about, but those individuals were always focused on appearing in court as an individual that holds a title, as a priority security interest holder. But you'd always run into this issue in court. And I finally went to the guy and I said, you're teaching private express trusts. I'm seeing it in my eyes that you can alleviate this issue if you were to place the private express trust as the vehicle that is the priority security interest holder, because you're separating the entities. You're no longer playing the name game. Mm-hmm. And he goes, yeah, that's what I do. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And so that, at that point, I determined that my journey was semi-complete in terms of the knowledge that I was looking to find to start me off on my mission. And my mission, my mission now is to empower others with the knowledge that I've gained, and to facilitate that, in a way that makes it amicable and malleable. Somebody that can understand what we're saying. So. Yeah. That trust law, to me, was the foundational principle of all understanding of what we were trying to describe in these contracts, in these court procedures, in these debt remedies. All of this, if you place the private express trust, just as Weiss said, right between the sovereign and the secured party, makes a whole lot more sense. It's just clear. And so when I read that, it finally all clicked for me. But those individuals wanted to move on their path. We wanted to move on our path. So by that time, Christian and I had gone over several paths of remedy and commercial paper and understanding creative financing and all sorts of methods of gosh, I don't even know what to say. Just debt and credit, I could say. So we realized that the clearest form that we could teach, the least convoluted, the least theoretical, the most factual, and the most well-balanced is trust law. Trust law is the longest and oldest form of law next to divine law and natural law and common law. Trust law is there. It's always been there. It's English. It's derived from English common law and equity, and there is so much case precedence that it's impossible for you to really rebut what we talk about or refute what we talk about. And that's why we developed the Global Trust Education Network, is because we wanted to develop a network of individuals that had the same understanding that they needed strong foundational principles in law to get them through court, to get them through legal battles, to get them through debt remedy, whatever it is. And the private express trust as an interest-holding vehicle was prime in being an intervener, a third-party intervener in those cases. And so for me, that's kind of where we came around. So.
Wow. How about you, Christian? What was your first encounters with this type of information, and what even led you there? And we know how you met PJ, but share a little bit about your, and thanks for sharing it, PJ. It's always really cool to get the background on somebody, because we all started somewhere. So it's kind of fun to revisit that, and we can kind of relate to each other a little bit on how we've, navigated this topsy-turvy path. So how about you, Christian?
Just as a comment on PJ's comments, trust law started when man was given dominion over the earth. Right? There's the original trust.
Thank you.
So I had two interesting things. Well, let me back up a little bit more, actually. Well over a decade ago, I had been an advisor to Wall Street investors and fund managers and brokers. I worked for a company that provides information to Wall Street, and so I was very much in the market and whatever. This is up until March of 2000. And March of 2000 was the dot-com burst, and I got out on March 8th, and the top of the NASDAQ was March 10th. Because I was very close to the information, I knew, I knew market trends, and I knew what was going on, and it was unsustainable, and I could see that it was the end. And so I went all cash, got out completely out of the market, left that job, figured that was nothing I wanted to be in anymore, and started a real estate company. And that, over time from then, I was increasingly curious as I had more time to look at Wall Street and the banking system and the stock market and commodities markets and all these things from a different perspective, I had time to pick at it from a new angle, and I started looking at. I guess the big start for me was The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is an amazing book. If you haven't read it, it's all about the formation of the Federal Reserve.
Right, Griffin, Edward
Yep,
Griffin.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the one. And I picked up, a friend handed me that book, and I picked it up and went, oh my God. And at the same time in my life, and the reason it struck me so hard was that I was really looking for the answers I could see that the dot-com bubble wasn't the only problem, it was just a symptom. Mm-hmm. I could see it clearly enough to get out of it in time, which I think most people unfortunately couldn't, but I could see that it was just a symptom, and the whole thing appeared to me to be a house of cards. And so I went looking for, deeper roots of that, and I found The Creature from Jekyll Island. At the same time, I had what I would consider to be the other most interesting area of study I've ever encountered, and that was consciousness. That one of the early books I picked up, and that was Power versus Force by David Hawkins. Also an amazing book. And so I had this period in my life that went on for years where I was studying these two things just all the time. Like, what's broken in the system, and I started getting into all that stuff, sovereignty and all of it, right? I mean, people are sending me stuff about the UPU and stuff about, you just name it. It just comes at you, right? You start to do research, and it just, it's where you are, right? It's like all this stuff, right? And I had that going on with these two subjects. Call it economics and governance on one side, and consciousness on the other side. And then the most amazing thing happened. One day, they just completely merged into the same subject. They were no longer separable. I realized that credit comes from creation, that all of this is we are the manifestors in this three-dimensional realm. We create what we get by our intentions, and the central experiment of the Maya, or the 3D realm that we're living in, is finance. It's commerce, and we are. This is a material world. It's a 3D world of matter. It's material, and therefore it makes total sense that materialism and material, economics are at the middle of it, and the central experiment. And so I just went, whoa. And suddenly I didn't have two topics anymore. I had one. And that was probably, I can't pinpoint the year, but it was many years ago. And since then, I can't separate them. They are completely inseparable. And one area plays off the other, and everything is in this big, soup of information now that I've had, years and years and years to process and go through and learn from. And, I spent a bunch of years as everyone's favorite crash test dummy. I was the guy who was willing to try anything. I'd do a modicum of research and go out and try it. Yeah. I'm the guy who's put through charges from the back of my Social Security card. I'm the guy who's, done tons of work on foreclosure and, fighting the banks. And I've done lots of administrative procedures, and I've done, unsecured debt, secured debt, cars, whatever. I mean, all of that stuff, right? And, at some point, it all started leading to trust and use. And so now, after, more years of really refining how I operate in life and how I see things, there's some great clarity. After this crazy soup I had going on, now I think I really am starting to see things for the truth and what they really are, and be able to put everything, not everything, but, put things in perspective and understand, true meaning when I see it, and separate it from the fiction.
It's
very intense.
Very nice, Christian. It's funny you say that, because when Christian and I both met, we both met under those two specific pretenses that we were exploring, and they merged, literally right in front of us, and that was a magic
literally
moment.
The day after I met, or 2 days after I met you, I invited PJ to a ceremony we were holding, as a sacred ceremony we were holding the day after the financial conference. I was like, how long are you in town for? You need to come to this. And
awesome.
So, the first day that we really hung out together, and Zach as well from Order of Merchants, that's when I met him too. I invited these guys to this spiritual ceremony, and we just hung out all day and had the most amazing connection, all of us. So
amazing conversation, right?
Yeah, to give a little background, that was my partner when we were creating. We had a Vegas study group when we were in Vegas, and it was, myself, Zach, and a handful of other individuals, and, we were pounding through this information on a consistent basis over the last 5 years that brought us to where we were, and he was really the study partner, that I had for a long time, and we all got to meet together, and it was just, it was fireworks. It was a lot of fun. So
yeah, it was like magic. It's like you had found your some of your tribe, at least with regards to having this type of understanding or shifting, this merging, where you really get that this area of finance and governance is it's not separate from our life. It is our life, and if we want to be effective, or if we want to run it, then we need to be conscious. So this brings us back full circle to one of the statements on your site, that conscious awareness is the key to contract and commerce. Right? It's like until you have that sort of realization, your come from might just be all about the technical aspect of it and what you need to do to get it done and blah, blah, blah. But that's not...
Which will fail. It will fail.
Just like anything in life. Like, you may want to do something in life, but if you don't have the foundational understanding of what you're doing and you just go and do it, chances are you're going to screw up. Chances are you're not going to have the results that you're seeking. We must bring the conscious awareness to everything in life. And so this is absolutely no different whatsoever. And you two both seem to have that shifting in your own consciousness that gets that. And so would you say that that's when things started maybe aligning for you more so, having success?
Definitely, I think. I mean, we've been fairly confident throughout our time, and we've been. I think success is relative. I think success is really based, once again, upon your conscious understanding of what a challenge is versus a problem, or what an opportunity is versus a problem. And this is historical. This is not a new concept, this consciousness thing. My favorite maxim of law, and I think it rings really well with trust law, specifically the creation of trusts, is the intention of the party is the soul of the instrument. And that dates back before many laws. So, I mean, people are well aware that it's your intention, it's your conscious understanding of what you intend on doing that drives the contract. And that's what we've focused our main principle of spirituality and consciousness on, is being clear and concise in what your intention is. As so many people will ask us, well, I need this trust, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. It's like, well, what's your intention with it? Well, I don't know. I want to see my home. It's like, well, dude, you're a little backwards. Like, you probably already got a lien on it. So there's all sorts of things that are going to take place that you need to understand so that you can reverse what you've done, just so that you can start fresh. And so we try very hard to separate those two. We try to separate debt remedy and remedy of financial matters from the trust education that we provide, because once you can grasp and really understand what we are teaching, the debt remedy becomes very simple. It becomes very easy to dismiss a case or to protect the interest of an encumbered property. So it's that foundational understanding that makes it the best. So.
And just pointing to something Weiss said on his essay here on express trust, he was referencing a particular case he was working on where someone was putting all the protections in place before the problems start. And I think, most of my life I was the type of kind of person who took on like, I learned the hard way, and I'm done learning the hard way. I'm just done with that. There's no reason it has to be that way. I can learn with much greater ease. And I can certainly put protections in place before, any problems should arise. So I think that's an important point that he came to see with that particular case, is that I see this as a way to put protections in place before anything would ever even arise. And if it should, then I would be ready to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. As the saying goes, oh, you know what? I lost it. Forget it. It's too funny. Totally lost it. But
popped in and popped out.
Popped in and popped out that fast. Yeah, ridiculous.
It's Sun Tzu. It's The Art of War, right? The Art of War is not a book about wars. Okay, The Art of War is a book about preventative medicine. It's the invention. It's the origin of preventative medicine. So if you know what the surroundings are and what the enemy looks like, if there is one, then you're prepared for it and you're set up right to handle it. And in the case of a private express trust, it's somebody comes after you, you dismiss it for lack of jurisdiction. That's just beautiful.
That was the saying I was about to say. Is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of remedy. That's what they say. So.
Wow. Yeah. Just amazing stuff. Really, inspiring. And, thank you guys for sharing a little bit of your history. That kind of, it just, we're all real people. So it's nice to share our experiences with each other. I really get a lot out of hearing your guys' road,
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, we really try. We try not to forget where we came from.
Yeah, and it's interesting for me because I talk to a lot of interesting people, and certainly people who've embarked on a similar path, and it's really interesting to me because kind of across the board, this seems to be the ebb and flow of the learning. A lot of us seem to have started out at a similar place, came upon certain information thereafter, and keep going. It's like part of it is, yes, our own conscious choosing, but I also wonder, just consciousness itself, is it guiding people to become enlightened about similar things at similar time, right? I mean, maybe the ancients would say, yes, around this particular time that would be happening, but I actually get to see it. And maybe I'm drawing, maybe I'm drawing conclusions from just, circumstantial evidence. Like, I'm not in those people's heads, but, I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting trend that I see.
Yeah, like the Hopi said.
There are over 30 cultures that predicted that at this time, 30 ancient cultures, okay, that predicted that at this time we would exit a dark age of understanding and begin an age of enlightenment. Mm-hmm. It can't all be wrong.
As I was just about to say with the Hopis, we are the people we've been waiting for.
Yeah. Well, and to me, it's kind of, that's what I'm seeing. That's what I can logically conclude. I'm seeing what they're talking about just in my conversations with people.
You're in a great vantage point to see that right up front. You're on the front lines. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So, okay, I guess we've been going for over 2 hours. Is there anything of it, more, extra importance that you guys would like to share? Also, I'd like to extend Dave. Do you have any questions for PJ or Christian at this time? Does anybody on chat have any questions for Christian or PJ at this time?
No, I do not have any questions. I'm just sitting here boggled as usual.
In a good way.
Well, I have a sort of thought that came to me as we were talking, and this is something that I share on our website and with a lot of people, but 10, 12,000 people listening here is something that have never heard me say this before. So I see the universe as a fractal of primordial energy. Okay, it's this unlimited, infinite depth of energy. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, how are we going to control a portion of that energy to affect positive change in our own lives and in the lives of the people around us? And that's really, to me, that's the crux of it. Okay, that's where our power is, because we're the manifestors. We're creating this story as we go, and we get to choose by our thoughts and intentions and our observations and what we do with those observations. We get to choose how this all goes. And if we realize from a position of being informed and enlightened that self-interest is a good thing, if we realize that we're all one, then we get to take this amazing primordial energy and we get to convert it into the material realm here as what we think it should be.
Yeah, and we do that on the inside, and then the outside the pieces start falling more into alignment with all that inner change and that inner transformation. And that's really the only way I see it's going to happen.
Well, in a holographic universe, which it's pretty much been proven we live in, the
yes.
entire outside is inside, and the entire inside is outside. There's really no difference, and so the inner work and outer work become one, just as all beings and all matter becomes one. If we look at this from the highest perspective of what's good for all life, and we approach it in a way that brings some, at least a modicum of management, but preferably a high level of concerted effort and control to what we want to see happen, then we don't need to be fighting anything. We just need to be creating a parallel path for a way forward.
Yeah, and again, if we take that, like what you were saying, that the outside is within is without, and as above, so below, and all of that, it's just really interesting to kind of look at the whole legal world, if you will, of judges and courts. That's manifest. I've talked about this with Zach before. He says we all have courts in our own mind. The court's really in your own mind, and I was just kind of going over some of Freud's ideas. The id, the ego, and the superego, and we look at that as a fractal, and then look at the outside. You have, the Supreme Courts and the lower courts. It's like all of these judges of our mind, these different factions of our mind. Maybe that's what they look like on the outside. And, we come into more harmony in our own minds and stop being at odds with our own self. We'll probably see less and less of that in our own, at least in our own little world, Yeah.
It's most definitely holographic. The issues that we see outside of ourselves definitely they lie within ourselves as well. And as Zach would say sometimes, that if you see an issue out there, a judgment, something, you have to look at yourself and say, where am I? Where is that in myself? If I see my government as being corrupt, where in my body is my government corrupt? Mm-hmm. It's interesting. It's an interesting way to talk about our come from, our state of being, our understanding. And it's so many different ways, but really it's about the intention. It's about, what do you see this world as? Is your intention to right something that you see wrong? Do you see everything as right? Do you see, how do you see your life, and how do you see yourself operating in it? And that's going to determine your level of consciousness. And as Christian said, when you get to the point where you understand that everything is one and that we're here to benefit the world, an enlightened form of self-interest is not a bad thing.
Not when we're all one. Because there really is no one, like me as an individual. Another thing I love about the, living as trustee of a private express trust is like the word "my" pretty much drops out of the vocabulary. And
right.
That's true. And there's something else.
I've been wanting that.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway. And this is like an actual Yeah, and this is an actual structure whereby I won't even be using the word my anymore, which is ultimately what I would like anyway. So this is it's just so interesting how it all interweaves with the spiritual growth, and then of course on, this area too.
I think there's another underlying premise of our teaching, and that's, it's important that you understand, you really understand your come from, you really understand that you are responsible. You're fully responsible for all your actions. And we look to provide individuals with that sense of understanding that they choose what they're going to do with this knowledge. They choose. We don't choose for them, they choose.
And so everybody's path is a little bit unique, some similarities, and we learn from each other. We're our students and teachers for each other, but ultimately it is a personal kind of unique little path.
And we really wanted to bring morals and ethics. We want to create responsible stewards of this world, responsible stewards of this consciousness. We want people that are not only knowledgeable and are conscious, but are operating with good intention.
Yeah.
That intention is so important. So surrounding our teachings is that moral compass that guides us. We have a very, very heavy moral compass that guides us, and we look to be responsible stewards of not only our own, belongings or our own rights, our own interests, but the interests of others. We look to be responsible stewards of this earth, of this world, and the universes that come thereafter, and the consciousness that exists between all of them in the ether. So the responsibility really lies on the individual to determine what it is that they're doing, and are they operating morally, or have they compromised their integrity for something material in this life? You never compromise your integrity in any life.
Never. And I'm sure we've all been at points in our life where we have, right? And we've probably suffered for that and experienced the repercussions of losing our integrity in some area, or not being authentic or honest with ourselves or others in some areas. This is all part of our, I guess, growing up in a way,
not to be
evolving.
Too prejudicial, but that's how you see Congress right now. I mean, a lot of Congress, a lot of the Senate, what we're seeing a lot of private interests that are taking the place of the moral compass. There's this, this trading of integrity for a material comfort in the moment. And you'll find that most people are very, they really resent doing that later on. There's lots of political figures that have come forward and said they've made a huge mistake,
Even myself, throughout my own life, if I had integrities in certain areas of my life, then I wouldn't have experienced the repercussions of not having it. It's all a learning process. And yeah, you're right. We are seeing that in the quote unquote, leadership or establishment, if you will. But I think your important point, and maybe we can make this our final point, is that we have an opportunity to step up and be responsible stewards of the planet, of all that's been entrusted to us in terms of material, tangible things, even spiritual knowledge. We've been blessed with the knowledge, and so we share it. And coming into being responsible stewards of life, of our own life and all of life, which we're not separate from. Any closing words from you guys?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. This is just such a great time, and we hope that people will take a good look at us. We have a great presence, and we look to expand, and we're looking for you to help support us. So.
You do.
Yeah,
I'm
so
grateful.
much.
Thank you too.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much too. And, again, so maybe we can have you back before you launch your next educational series, whenever that might be. We'd love to have you back. As Dave told you earlier, he would absolutely love having you back as well. So hopefully we get to see you guys again in a few months and reconvene, do this all over again.
That'd be cool.
That'd be great. Meanwhile, GTEN.org is, I can't encourage listeners enough to check it out.
We also have a Facebook presence. We have a Facebook presence at facebook.com/GTEN.org. You're welcome to find Global Trust Education on there as well, and we have a Google Plus as well. So any way you'd like to connect with us through the community, we have some great community methods for you to connect, and we look to expand. So.
And if you want to see more, there's lots more on YouTube as well. We've got, portions of our webinars and stuff are up on YouTube at youtube.com/G10 webinars.
I'm sorry, Facebook.com is a / also. I always get the backslash and the / mixed up. Ridiculous.
I know.
So,
no, but I'm glad you guys are going over this.
Yeah, on YouTube we have some great things. For those of you that want to check out what we're about, we've put up the entire first part, part 1 of our Private Express Trust series, so you can get a real good foundational understanding of what we do. And once again, you can check that out at youtube.com. So it's really
a lot of different ways. Yeah, a lot of different ways that these guys can be seen. Again, as they said, you can visit their YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search GTEN or Global Trust Education Network, either one.
Yep,
and
GTEN.
They have Okay, great. And Facebook. So you Facebookers, go visit them on Facebook. They also have a Facebook presence and said Google Plus presence. And, of course, the site is GTEN.org, G10.org. So please visit them and all they have to offer. These are the times to really, really get with the program and understand what our rights are, because we are in times where we very well may be challenged. And if we don't understand what our rights are and we don't have the balls and the know-how to stand on them, we then subject ourselves to be directed at the whim of some so-called authority. And I think a lot of us are not even, we obviously don't want that because we're seeking something else. So on that note, you guys you can check out my site, right, humanitytranscending.com. In a day or so, I will have both of these interviews up. I also plan on making just a video for YouTube of both interviews made available on that word my, it's not mine, the YouTube channel, Humanity Transcending YouTube channel, and so there'll be a lot of places. I want to make it so that there's several places to access these 2 interviews because they're chock full of amazing information and amazing conversation, so I'll make sure that happens. Again, thank you guys.
We'll be posting up on our YouTube as well for you, so.
Great. Yeah, so great. It'll be available at Humanity Transcending and G10 YouTube channels, everybody. So thank you. This has been amazing.
Additionally, I will download them and put them into my video archives.
Oh, wow.
So
thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so
Dave,
there'll be a lot of
thank you so much.
Dave.
Yes, dear.
You heard?
Yeah, we just wanted to say thank you so much for hosting us.
Well, I am honored that you gentlemen would come on this little rinky-dink station I have and put out information that just ties together with so many other people who are on here trying to get the same information out.
Pleasure to be here, Dave. Thank you so much. And thank you, Siobhan.
Yes, thank you,
Yeah, you got it, my friend.
And
You're welcome.
And next up in a few minutes, hopefully we're going to have Soul Expressions with JP and the one and only Andrew Bartas.
Very nice.
All right, great. Well, we're signing off, everybody, from the Freedom Study Group radio show. This is a once-a-month show. It's the last Tuesday of every month, 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Tune in for conversations about freedom, because that's what it's truly all about, right? In our core, we're truly free. We just have to set our minds free and live that out for all to see. Ooh, that was a nice little rhyme. All right, everybody, have a great night. Thank you, and sending lots of love. This is Humanity Transcending, signing off.